All right, guys. We have the wildest, craziest election. Uh, Even though we've had the most intense, closest elections ever, one after another, this one is even more unpredictable. So, is it going to be the closest race ever? No, not necessarily at all. We've had some races in presidential election history that is were so close that they, had to go to the courts over and over again. Obviously, Bush v. Gore, theoretically in the beginning started decided in Florida in one state by 537 votes. That turned out it was so close that it turns out Al Gore had actually won the state of Florida and the Electoral College, but the Supreme Court blocked that conclusion. By the way, let's just note real quick that if a liberal court had blocked any recount of a state for Trump, this country would have exploded with right wing rage. And a conservative Supreme Court blocked any recount of Florida. And that ensured a wrong victory for Bush. It turns out Gore would have won. So, anyways, my point is there's been super tight elections, including the last one, even though Biden blew him out by 7.5 points. I'm sorry, 7.5 million people in the popular vote. He only won by 43,000 votes in 3 swing states. So it's almost impossible to be closer than those 2 elections. So that's not what's going on here. What's going at the end, which is super interesting too, even though no one has any idea who's going to win, I'm going to tell you what my intuition was over the weekend. I'm going to tell you why both sides have really interesting cases. What I'm not saying is that this is going to be the closest election. In fact, there's a chance that one of them has what we would call an electoral college landslide, right? Not a popular vote landslide, not a landslide necessarily within the states, but when you add up the electoral college at the end of the night, it might be a blowout. So, but then if it might be a blowout for one of the 2 sides, why are we so unsure? Well, there's excellent reasons for that. That's what I'm going to explain here. Look, guys, we got the show live every day at 6:00 Eastern. Make sure you've got all the details on the election, all the polling, all the latest shenanigans, as the kids call it, live every weekday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Always check it out on the Young Turks on YouTube right here. So, okay, let's get to the nitty gritty of what's going on. Then I'll tell you what my intuition was over the weekend. So on the Trump side, he's got plenty of positives going for him. Again, guys, look, I'm wearing a "Build the Walls and Make Trump Pay for It" t-shirt. I'm on the left. This is on shoptyt.com. There's some balls to the walls. I like Tim Walz. I'm on the left. There's no question about it. But my job is to do fair and objective analysis of politics as well. So when you look at it that way, Trump has a bunch of advantages. He appears to be the more populist candidate. Now, I say appears to be because he's not at all populist. He keeps saying that he's going to do whatever his billionaire donors tell him to do. Kamala Harris also will do whatever the donors want her to do. So, to me, in that category, honestly, they're not really tied. If I'm looking at it from an analysis of their policy and what they're going to do, I'll tell you that Trump is worse because he's both systemically corrupt as Kamala Harris is, but on top of that, he adds personal corruption. Now, okay, that's all fine and good, but what is the appearance when you're doing political analysis? Because what I think of Trump isn't relevant. What the voters think of Trump is relevant, and they think that he's the more populist candidate, and fairly easily so. So I think that populists generally win. So that's score 1 for Trump on that. But on the other hand, when they ask them who's the change candidate, in the last poll I saw, and these go up and down, Kamala Harris was considered the change candidate, and normally the change candidate wins. So, okay, that leaves me in a quandary. There isn't an easy answer there, right? Then you look at some of the advantages that Kamala Harris has. And these are things that are surprising and normally not on the Democrat side, because normally what happens is Trump overperforms his polling because he has a lot of unlikely voters. In fact, I'm going to give you some devastating numbers about that in a second. But in this case, the Democrats have been overperforming their polling in the last couple of cycles because, not last couple of cycles, the last cycle and the special elections that have happened since then, and the ballot measures that have happened since then. They keep overperforming the polls on those because of Roe v. Wade. So And then the Democrats have a theory, and I have seen anecdotal evidence of this, where there's secret Kamala Harris voters. There's the unlikely voters coming out for Kamala Harris that normally might not have voted, but are going to vote based on female reproductive rights and just an assault on female rights overall. And again, if you're a right winger and you're like, oh, they were not assaulting female rights, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters the average American who's going to go to vote thinks. And so they, generally speaking, that is 70 to 30, not even 30. It's a blowout. At least 7 out of 10 Americans agree with Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump on abortion. So if you're ignoring that and you're on the right wing, ignore it at your peril, but you're nuts to ignore that. That's your biggest liability. And I think most right wingers and Republicans understand that by now. So we've got that normally going for Trump, but in this case, it might be going for Kamala Harris because of the unlikely voters on our side. And then plus what I mean by the secret voters is people that have been, she's got an army out there doing door knocking and Trump doesn't. Trump being lazy and disorganized and underfunded hurts him in the grassroots in that regard. She's doing a lot better of job of getting out the vote. And right now she has a huge lead, but she's supposed to have a huge lead in early voting. How do we even know that she has a lead? No votes have been counted. That's a guess based on whether registered Democrats or registered Republicans are handing in their votes. They might not necessarily, a registered Democrat might not necessarily vote for Kamala Harris, but obviously more likely. By the way, Benjamin Morrill, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships. We appreciate you guys. We love our members. Thank you for allowing us to do honest analysis. I was looking around YouTube today, and there's a lot of folks who are like, rah, rah, Democrats, and they're doing great because people want to hear what they want to hear. But those folks are going to be shocked if Trump wins, and they're going to be discombobulated. They're what all my favorite hosts on television and on YouTube told me that Kamala Harris is the greatest thing on earth. I thought she was going to win by 90 points. No, and of course the right wing thinks the same exact thing about Donald Trump. And guys, I've never seen an election where both sides are this confident. Like I've seen them fake confidence, I've seen them have real confidence, but have it be mitigated. But the partisans on both sides, because the media, other than the Young Turks, is so partisan. They're either totally on Trump's side or totally on Kamala's side. So the people who watch those different media are absolutely sure that their side's going to win. But I got bad news for one of them. I'm not sure which one, but one of them is going to be shocked to find out that reality does not match their own bubble. Everybody's in these bubbles. We're trying super hard to be outside of those bubbles to give you real analysis. And so you're not shocked. And by the way, our live coverage on election day starts at noon Eastern, goes for 15, 16 hours on election day. Do not miss it. If you want to know what's actually happening, you tune to the Young Turks. If you want rah BS from people who are going to lie to you, you go to the partisans. Okay. So now, oh, by the way, bring out your dead dragon. Thank you for writing in and for being a member. And yes, tons of people, to his point, think, oh no, the polls are wrong, and it's always polls that have them losing. I know better than all the evidence in the world. Really? How do you know better than all the facts and stats? And by the way, again, this applies to both sides. So, and neither side sees the other side. The Trump voters don't think that there is any unlikely voters for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris people think, oh, well, there might be some unlikely voters for Trump, but we're past that. We did so well in 2022, et cetera. Okay, so let's go to more facts. Let me give you, before I give you my so-called intuition, and now, by the way, both sides are giving it. I do want to give you the devastating numbers that I alluded to a little earlier. But right before that, one more thing. Actually, two more things. One, I just read all of the different pundits. So James Carville and David Plouffe on the Democratic side, obviously saying, no, we think we're going to win. Now, Plouffe's not saying, oh, yeah, it's guaranteed. Carville's saying, I'm sure of it. But he's also saying an army that's filled with hope is better than an army that is filled with dread. So he's trying to create hope, and he's kind of admitting it. I read his 3 reasons why he thinks Kamala Harris is going to win. They weren't overly persuasive, but his confidence sways me a little bit. Him telling me his gut doesn't matter too much to me, but I'm about to tell you my gut, right? Nate Silver then talked about his gut, and I'm kind of shocked to be exactly where Nate is overall in this election cycle, because I've disagreed with him so much in other cycles, and so I no need to get back into the old battles, but in this case, he keeps saying, guys, the polling is 50 freaking 50. How do any of you know, right? But then he gave his gut and intuition as well. So I was a little convinced by the data that Pluff shared and some of the points that Carville said, but only a little convinced. Okay. And on the Trump side, Nate Silver, after saying there's no way of knowing and it proving it actually really well in his New York Times article that, yeah, a lot of these polls are having a lot of trouble adjusting to people's reluctance to answer the call. The fact that they're, all the different issues with polling, but especially that they cannot reach those unlikely voters. And that is frustrating the pollsters, not because the science behind polling doesn't work. It's because, yes, sometimes they have trouble applying that science in a way that they are comfortable is accurate enough, which then shakes my faith in the polls enough that I become more uncertain. But his gut is saying that at the end it's going to be Trump. Now, the betting markets are also relevant. Polymarket, you guys know, is a sponsor of ours, so I go check them every once in a while. They're clear, and so 63-37. And by the way, almost all the markets are in that direction. So don't think it's just Polymarket, but at polymarket.com you can see with your own eyes, and you saw it rising as honestly you saw Trump rising in the polls in the swing states. So for whatever it's worth, I think that is, look, do I think 63-37 is the right number? No, I think it's close to 50-50, but I understand why that number exists because of the recent polling. So now let me get to those numbers. So first of all, in the recent polling, I mean, this is a conundrum, this race, because just yesterday I told you guys in Michigan, there were 7 recent polls. One was a tie, but all of the other 6, Trump was winning. So and by the way, he's winning in all the swing states right now when you take the aggregate of the polls on Real Clear Politics average. Now, other people say, oh, no, poll came out 30 minutes ago, a poll came out 30 days ago, and the Real Clear Politics average is not right. Okay, that's fine, okay? And other people say, oh, Polymarket at 63% isn't right. Oh, I'm so outraged at how wrong it is. By the way, in the markets, if you're outraged at how wrong it is, there's an easy answer to that. Go bet the other side. So anyway, I don't want to get into the betting. That's your business, not my business, okay? But so those are fascinating. Here, guys, let me just do quick shout outs. Benjamin Worrell, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate you. And yes, all we're trying to do is tell the truth. Nobody's perfect. You crazy dog. I'm definitely not perfect, and not nobody I've ever seen is. Tribal Woman, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you guys. So the devastating numbers. So Biden in 2020, according to the polling, had 4.7 lead in Pennsylvania. And he won Pennsylvania. What did he win it by? 1.2. Uh-oh. That's a 3.5 point difference from where he was polling to where he wound up. Okay, how about Michigan and Wisconsin? In Michigan, he had a 7.9 lead according to the polling on election day. Where did he wind up? He won Michigan by 0.6, 0.6. In Wisconsin, he had an 8.4 point lead, which is gigantic, according to the polling, and he did win Wisconsin. What did he win it by? 0.6. Now, if that holds, then Trump's going to crush, right? But the reason it might not hold is because Kamala Harris has a ton of undecided voters on her side. But that is not all. Now, senior voters, those are the most likely to vote, 65 and above, the most important demographic in voting because they're the most reliable voters, have started to peel away from Trump and go towards Kamala Harris. My guess is it's because they're getting wigged out by Trump constantly being nuts. Like, oh, they're eating the cats and dogs. They take if you send any of your boys to high school, they turn them all into girls and send them back as girls. And I'm going to attack my political opponents and I'm going to put them in prison. Well, that freaks people out. And if you're a right winger, you're like, oh, no, he didn't say any of that. He was kidding. He was trolling. He was this. He was that. Yeah, I know. Again, it's not your bubble that matters. It's that 68-year-old, that 71-year-old at home looking at that on TV and going, he thought Hitler's generals were better? I'm bothered by it. I know every right winger is now, that's not true. He didn't say it. But brothers and sisters, just because you think he didn't say it because your demigod, your Messiah told you that he didn't say it, doesn't mean that other people won't think that he said it. And by the way, he did say it. John Kelly's not making up that. I know when they're lying. I tell you all the time when the establishment's lying. Their lies are pretty clear and they have a totally obvious pattern. This does not fit that pattern at all. By the way, the effing Mexican line, I think, does fit that pattern. I don't trust that line. And I tell you when I don't trust lines, even if they're against Trump or against my own interests, we're honest about it. But him saying that he preferred Hitler's generals because they follow orders is very convincing. Two different sources. John Kelly was his chief of staff, and he's on the record. Okay, you could choose to disbelieve anything you like. Again, we're trying to figure out who's going to win, right? So they're freaked out by that. Some non-college educated voters, white voters in that category, it's the strongest base for Donald Trump. But now some of them are peeling away to Kamala Harris. So that is an amazing turn of events. I did not expect that at all. You know what I think? I think that Kamala Harris embracing the corporate CEOs and the Cheneys is what cost her momentum. The fact that the momentum shifted in the polls is clear. Whether the polls are accurate or not, the momentum did shift. So that goes against Kamala Harris. So at the end of the day, guys, given especially the instability in the polls, it is nearly impossible to determine who's actually going to win the election. And so people keep saying, Cenk, make a prediction, make a prediction. What is it? Well, it depends, guys. These predictions aren't just like, oh, this is what I feel. Oh, this is magic here, blah. I'm not a Swami. I look at the data, the facts, the science. I put it all together and then make a decision based on that. And right now, I'm at a no decision. Okay, but I will tell you my gut for whatever it's worth. And I agree with Nate Silver that the guts aren't worth that much at this point. But over the weekend on Sunday, I had the same kind of doom feeling that came over me that I had the weekend before the 2016 election. So I tweeted about it in that weekend. At that point, Hillary had a big lead in the polls, but I wrote on social media and I shared it with you guys on the Young Turks on Monday. When? 6 o'clock Eastern. That's right. And I said, oh boy, guys, buckle up, brace for impact. I got a really bad feeling about this. And that bad feeling was not just, oh, it's coming from inside me, some mysterious force. No, it's a collection of all of the data and the anecdotes and everything else that goes into it. And the pattern of elections, not only in America, but worldwide, where people are voting for populists, people are voting for change. And I sensed that change was coming in 2016 and that the Democrats were not seeing it clearly. In 2020, I thought Biden was going to win, and I actually thought he was going to win easily. I was right about the popular vote, but I was not right about the Electoral College. He did not win easily in the Electoral College, and that shook me for how close that election was. And that was in terms of my faith in the polling. So finally, this time around, over the weekend on Sunday, I had that same kind of feeling like, oh no, it might be too late. There's not that much time left. Trump has the momentum. And I thought, I reached for a seatbelt. I mean, buckle up, because I don't know if there's going to be impact, but there might be. There really, really might be. So now that doesn't mean he's going to win. And Trump, guys, I know it's so hard for you to understand this, but just because your guy loses doesn't mean that people cheated. Like in your world, the country's 99% for Trump. And so obviously they had to cheat to win. But in the real world, it's a 50-50 race. How many times do people have to explain to you 50 for you to understand that you might lose? In fact, on the day of the election on 2016, Ben Mankiewicz and I started the show, and I said, you got to check out Election Day. Make sure you're watching the Young Turks on Election Day, most honest coverage. So Ben and I came in and we read these these analysis, and New York Times had her at 90% or whatever they had of winning, and Huffington Post, I remember, had it at like 98.4% chance that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And both of us said, no, it's at around 65-35 given the polling in favor of Hillary Clinton. But we said 35% happens all the time. In fact, it happens 35% of the time. because people think 65-35, oh, that means the 65 is going to win. No, the 35 wins 35% of the time. Okay, so in this case, even if it's 55-45 in one direction, even if it's 55-45 in terms of the odds in favor of Donald Trump, just like in 2016, he can lose, even though he's more likely to win according to the polling. So right now, it's not clear that he's likely to win, by the way. It's at 50-50. But even if you think that the polling shows that Trump's likely to win, he could still lose just like Hillary Clinton did in 2016. So that is why this thing is nearly impossible to determine. But the reason I think that I had that gut feeling is because at the end of the day, people really want change. And even though she's winning in some polls as the change candidate, barely hanging on there, her embrace of the establishment, her embrace of keeping things exactly as things are, and even the bipartisan embrace they think is helpful, but I don't think it is. I think what it does is it reminds people of the old so-called bipartisan days that they didn't like. Everybody in Washington loves the old bipartisan days. Everybody on television likes the old bipartisan days, but that didn't really work for the American people. That's why they voted against Hillary Clinton in 2016. That's why the last election was so close. And one last thing. So the Trump-backed candidates suck and they get annihilated in elections. But Trump constantly overperforms them. Why the difference? And nobody seems to be able to know. I have a theory on that, and I think this is a good theory. I think the difference is Trump seems like an authentic person. He isn't, but he has that appearance because he doesn't look like a robot, right? He might be lying, but have the appearance of authenticity because he speaks like a normal person. Whereas all other politicians, even his MAGA guys that he endorsed, are robots. So they come out, I will take away all your rights. I am a black Nazi. And people are like, I don't like that. No, right? But when Trump comes in and goes, I don't know what the hell is going on. I'm going to try to figure it out with you guys. People like that. If you're a Democrat, you want to pull out all your hair and say, no, people don't like that because you don't like that. And I don't like that. But a lot of people do. And so the one that appears more, and whereas Kamala Harris is more of a standard politician, let's be honest. That's why I think they should have used Tim Walz a lot more because he doesn't seem like a standard politician. He seems like a regular person. He seems like a populist. The populist wins. So if they vote based on change and they think she's a change of the old Trump and Biden years, great, then she'll win. Especially when you add in the senior citizens coming to her side, the abortion vote, some of the non-college educated white people now starting to go towards her. But if the populism holds, his usual overperformance of the polls holds, and the momentum of the polls holds, then Trump will win. So it's going to be amazing on election day. And if you hear anybody telling you they know for certain what's going to happen, don't believe the hype. They do not. So let's all find out together. All right, guys. Show starts in about 20 minutes, as it does every weekday at 6 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tune in every day to get the latest and have fun doing it. All right, guys. Much love.